we go. Sometimes it feels just really good to settle into the space, knowing that I can just be here, set everything aside for a minute, a few minutes, just connect inwards a little bit. So just kind of continuing on, these past few weeks, we've been working with this head center and this theme of clarity. We started with that, identifying, what does it feel like in our headspace? What do different types of thinking styles feel like? Being able to actually just kind of sense into them, put words to it, get used to naming it in different ways. And that's something that, we practice, all the time. I highly encourage you. It's like, as you notice, like, I'm just kind of in a weird place. You're like, this would be an interesting way of just kind of sitting here and figuring out, what does this thinking style feel like? And then we went on to noticing that even when you drop all action, once you have some of those words in place, some of that knowing, the knowing is just there. You don't actually have to figure it out. The knowing is just there when you just let go and let it happen. And then last week we stepped into experimenting with, what is it about figuring out that actually blocks clarity, and noticing all of the extra thoughts, the figuring out, the beliefs about self, the beliefs about others, that kind of like come in and put on blinders and filter out things that we don't see or we aren't aware of, such that a lot of our cognitive activity actually reduces our ability to feel that sense of clarity, to think clearly. And so just taking this, like, just this last little step further, like, how do we play with this? How do we use this in real life? One of the things I find myself doing often with people is, they'll come in, they want some help with something, and, like, and there's this and there's that. And I just like, I don't know what's here. And I'll just like, okay, slow down, just settle in, just settle right in, just breathe, quiet down. What do you know to be true? And sometimes it's like a boom. They have a one sentence answer that says this. Or they'll be like, well, yeah, but I think it's like, but I don't know. And it's just like, and then there's this long explanation of all these other things and just all this vagueness and abstraction. It's like, no, stop. Come back, breathe, just quiet down here for a moment and ask yourself, what do you know to be true? And it's funny how people know. People actually do know. It's that sense of when you don't try to figure it out, there is a knowing that's there. But oftentimes it's a knowing that we don't like, that we don't actually want to admit to or see. And it's one of those things that it's like, yeah, but if I actually admit that that's true, then I'll have to actually do something I don't want to do. There's a lot of reasons why we don't want to see what's actually true. Other things about ourselves, or the actions that we'll have to take. That there's this little bit of blocking where it's easier to go up into the confusion of like, well, I just don't know. I just don't know. And I do find this true for myself. It's like when I'm really in that place of, I just don't know, it usually means I do know and I don't like it. And I just don't want to admit it. And so I'll just like kind of filter things out so that I just can't see it. So I feel confused instead. Because feeling confused is just better than admitting something I don't really want to admit is true. So what we want to do is play with using this clarity, using this clarity to come into a place where there's just stillness. If you can, just quieting that inside down. And then sometimes it's just like dropping one little question into it. Last time we looked at, a situation, having it just as an image out there that you're looking at, just what do you see? What do you not see? Just letting it be there. This is similar, but it's just asking a very direct question. It's like really quiet. Sometimes I think of it as like, it's just like quiet water and you just drop a rock in it and you watch the ripples. And when the water's all churning, you drop a rock in it, there's no ripples. You can't see anything. Of course not. So this is just coming to that place of really deep quiet, dropping in a question and seeing what comes up. And sometimes what comes up isn't words necessarily. It might be a physical sensation. It might be an emotion. So it's like what, you quiet really down and say, what is really true here? And there's just like a cramping in my heart. And like, oh, what's really true here is that I just feel heartbroken. It's just that simple. There's nothing really to figure out. It's just, I feel heartbroken. So be open to just receive whatever comes up, in that stillness, whether it's words, a sensation. Sometimes it can be an image, it can be a picture, it can be a symbol. It can be very abstract sometimes of it's just a sound. And yet, sometimes when you sit with it, you're like, oh, yeah, that. So if you notice that when you ask yourself a question, it goes off into this whole abstract explanation, it's not coming from that place of clarity. It's coming from that place of all of the thoughts and all of the beliefs and all of the background and the history that just kind of layer in onto the thinking. When you ask yourself that question in a place of stillness, you usually get a really clear, just short answer, this right here. So with that, we'll play with it. We'll see what happens. And as always, just openness to experience. So if you're in this place, sometimes you're like, there's no way my mind's going to quiet down today. There's absolutely no possibility of clarity. I was in that place a couple days ago and I'm like, I sit down and there's like this place over here and this place over here and this one's talking over here. Like clarity's not happening. It's not going to happen. And so you just acknowledge, okay, that's where you're at today. Or you just might be able to get to that place of stillness and you're like, oh, this, yes. And here in this place, I can hear my question. All right. Okay, so closing your eyes and beginning to turn that attention inwards. Starting with the breath. It's that signal to yourself that, oh yes, this is where I'm starting. I know this pattern of tuning in. My brain, my body, it knows what to do as I start to orient on the breath. Beginning to feel the sensations of breathing. As the air goes in through the nose, down the throat, through the chest, all the way down to the belly. And then from the belly, through the chest, through the throat, all the way out the nose. And maybe even noticing all of the little muscles there in your face, in your cheeks, in your upper palate, the back of your throat. Maybe even softening your palate, your tongue. almost as if you could inhale all the way to the center of your head. Noticing some of those muscles way back there in the throat. So it's as if that inhale goes all the way back to your ears. Really allowing your attention to come all the way in, following the breath. Sometimes it can even feel like bellows, where there's a sucking in of the air all the way to the center of the head, and then a gentle releasing of the air right there from the center of the head, from the back of the throat, out the nose. Maybe even noticing the rhythm of the breath, the inhale, the top of the inhale, the exhale, and the bottom of the exhale. And you don't have to change anything. It's all just breathing. It doesn't have to be any particular way. You can experiment if you want, playing with the breath. And if it feels comfortable to do so, maybe just noticing what happens if you extend that space at the end of the exhale. So you exhale completely, and there's just a space, and then the inhale. And then again at the end of the exhale, feeling the bottom there. There's an emptiness, a quiet, nothing. And then when you feel ready, inhaling. And again, all experimenting, no right or wrong, just noticing. But noticing how it feels to breathe that way, where there's just a longer hold at the bottom of the breath. There's no holding of the breath. There's no movement. It's just quiet and still. And then the inhale starts. Sometimes it's fun to just play with how long can you hold it there at the bottom of the exhale before you inhale. And what does it feel like when you do that? And as always, paying attention to what your body needs, never forcing, never allowing the breath to go into discomfort, but just playing, just noticing. And from there, you can even practice playing with, where do you want your breath to center? It can be there in the head, it can be in the chest, it can be in the belly. If you're going to play with this breath of just sitting quietly in the end of the exhale, where does that feel best? You can play with it right there in the chest, inhaling, then exhaling, and then just sitting there waiting before the inhale starts again. Maybe even noticing if it feels different or the same from having that attention right there in the head with the breath. Or perhaps you drop all the way down to your belly, noticing the rise and fall of your belly with the inhale, the exhale, and then just waiting, pausing, holding down there at the bottom of the exhale until the inhale becomes active again. Noticing how you can feel that breath in these three different places. They might feel similar or different, might be very different, have very different feeling tones or effects when you take that inhale from these different places. So checking in with where you're at right now, noticing if you're in that place where you just know there's no quieting of the mind happening right now. You know, the voices inside are too loud, the thoughts are too fast, the pain is too loud, grogginess is here, distraction is here. And if you notice that, just lots of gentleness and just say, yes, that's what's here right now. I'm just going to breathe. I'm just going to enjoy breathing, finding that place that feels most comfortable. And just noticing what it feels like to stay there at the bottom of the exhale. And if you notice that as you've been breathing here like this, things have quieted down, if there is that sense of stillness inside, you might want to play with asking a question. And it can be a very simple question. You can ask yourself, what is most true in this moment? And just simply noticing how your body responds. Again, it might be a sensation. It might be an image. It might be a complete sentence or a phrase. But it's usually pretty short. It's not complicated. Just asking what is most true in this moment. And in the quiet, noticing what arises. And then just practicing the breathing again. Inhaling, exhaling, and then just staying, resting down there at the bottom of the exhale. Inhaling, exhaling, just resting, staying, holding that bottom of the exhale until it is time to inhale again. Another question you might ask yourself, and dropping it into this place. You can ask yourself, what am I most afraid of in seeing clearly about myself? What am I most afraid of seeing clearly about myself? Just welcoming whatever comes up, whether it's that big, long, abstract reasons why that doesn't really apply, or if there's a really clear physical sensation or emotion or picture. Just welcoming whatever comes up. And again, staying with the breath, the inhale and the exhale, staying there at the bottom. Noticing the longer you stay there at the bottom, things quiet and quiet and quiet, and then the inhale happens. But it's not a dead quiet, it's an alive quiet. A quiet that vibrates. And then lastly, dropping this question into that quiet. What would it feel like to be truly intimate with myself? What would it feel like to be truly intimate with myself? And again, just welcoming whatever comes up, however your system responds in this moment. And then dropping the patterned breathing, letting your body breathe however it wants to breathe in this moment. Perhaps really filling your lungs and exhaling. Maybe that sense of breathing all the way to the edges of your skin. Noticing your whole physical body from your head down into your feet. Sometimes it feels like just inhaling all the way out to the edges and then exhaling, relaxing right back to the center. Inhaling all the way out, taking in all of you, letting your awareness take in every last little drop of yourself. And exhaling, relaxing, releasing. Taking a few more breaths. And when you feel ready, opening your eyes.